Hi, thanks for listening to the monthly social here on YouTube. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button. It would mean the world to us. All right, hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Take care. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the monthly social self-help spotlight. I'm your host, Guido Prino, welcoming Dr. David Lee Fish, who is here to chat with us about stage and speech fright and his 5-day solutions as part of overcoming performance anxiety. Dr. Fish, how are you?
Oh, Guido, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
We are glad. I was anxious, but now I'm not because see how
I saw what you did there.
I know. I hope everybody else did. Look, we were just talking briefly before we kick things off officially here, but I understand you've resided in North Carolina and Michigan,
Mhm.
and those were school-related residencies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you call one of those places home?
Yeah, I grew up in Arizona, right? In Tucson, Arizona. And I went to school in Michigan. So it was kind of I went from and I'd be there in the winter time in Michigan, and then I'd be in Arizona in the summer. So it was kind of like going from the oven to the freezer every year, right? Uh, so I like to think of myself I still like to think of myself as an Arizonan, but I haven't lived there for years, right?
Right.
In Michigan for 10 years. I loved it. But I've been in North Carolina longer than anywhere else, right? Other than maybe Japan. I also lived in Japan. So,
Nice, Japan.
mhm.
So what Michigan, Upper Peninsula, Lower Peninsula?
No, Ann Arbor, Ann Arbor.
Oh,
So,
right
so
on.
near Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah. The Palace of Auburn Hills near there, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I might have frequented that place a few times for concerts and other things. And so now you're in North Carolina. Tell us something, what's a must-see in North Carolina?
Yeah, North Carolina, it has this wonderful, beaches on the
Yeah.
one hand and mountains on the other, right? So many of us, when it comes time to vacation, when we're in the middle, and it's are we going to go to the beach or are we going to go to the mountains, right? So me, I prefer the mountains, definitely the mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains, Asheville. Especially during fall when the leaves are changing color, it's just wonderful.
It sounds beautiful. I thought you were going to say hurricanes, but I was wrong. So look, I know you didn't come here to talk locations and states and all that. I always just like to have folks connect with where
Yeah,
we're from,
for
right?
sure, for
As
sure.
I sit here with Toronto in my background and but I'm recording here in the northern part of
Well,
uh,
so that said,
Ontario. So
Guido, right?
yeah.
I now live in Durham, North Carolina, where all the cool kids are. And I'm actually, I maybe you can see a bit of a brick wall behind me.
Uh-huh.
This is a former tobacco warehouse from around the turn of the century, not 21st century, 20th century, from 1905 or so. It has like 14-foot ceilings.
Wow.
Durham, North Carolina used to be Tobacco City, right? So that's where Lucky Strike and all sorts of in Chesterfield, and they were made here. And the kingpin of that around 1900 was a guy named Duke, right? And what he was the first to popularize pre-rolled cigarettes, right?
Wow.
So before then, you'd carry your pouch of cigarettes and your papers, and you'd roll them yourself. But then, the story goes, the country was quickly modernizing and industrializing, and folks didn't have a long time to catch a smoke. They'd only have like a 15-minute break on their factory job. So his cigarettes, were invented just at the right moment, and this place boomed. Durham boomed. There are just dozens of these old brick tobacco warehouses and factories around here.
Wow. Museum lesson right here on the show.
That's that.
So you're just hanging out there right now, or
My wife and I live here. So,
oh, very
I
nice.
taught at Catawba College near Charlotte, north of Charlotte, North Carolina. Great
Okay.
school. If any of the Salisbury people are listening, forgive me. I didn't find it the most exciting or interesting city to be. When I gave that up to being a professor to do other things, this is my son lives near here, and it's a wonderful city. It's we live heart of downtown. We can walk everywhere. There's these just great little restaurants. They've done some interesting things with the old tobacco factories. There's something called the American Tobacco Campus that has all sorts of restaurants, and the NPR station is located there, and so forth. So anyway, that's uh,
Right on. Right
my
on.
plug for Durham, North Carolina. We love it.
Yes. Love Durham, not meaning to upset anybody else of any other places we mentioned that we don't love as much. So,
People
um,
of Salisbury, you were always very kind to me.
right. They don't have any anxiety now whatsoever.
That's right. Now that I'm gone.
So let's talk about that. You're
Yeah.
here to talk about the real reason you're here is to talk about performance anxiety.
Yeah.
Was there some specific event or series of events that led you to classify that as something you had?
My whole damn life as a performer. Does that count?
That's an easy answer.
It started, Guido. I was in high school, Tucson, Arizona, right? And this is going to really age me, but Sonny and Cher came through town to do a performance. And I was in high school still. I got a chance to be in the band, backing him. Those type of even to this day, those touring shows, they're like the core of the ensemble will be, folks that are associated with those artists, but then they'll flesh it out with, horn players and so forth, right? So I got to play saxophone, right? Wasn't even old enough to drive to go there. This is my first gig ever, first gig. And I look out, and there had to be like 10,000, 15,000 people, something like that, right? That was immediately nerve-wracking for me. Then the house lights go down, the spotlights come on, and the rhythm section starts playing. There's this vamp repeating phrase for one of their songs, and the beat goes on dun 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 dun. Dun. Okay, so all this is happening. They're not on stage yet. Sonny and Cher aren't on stage yet, but then they come on. The director cues the rest of the band, and I'm just okay. So it's fight, flight, or freeze, right? In the face of anxiety or fear. I chose, or it chose me, the third of those, freeze, right? So I missed my first professional entrance, right? The thing that snapped me out of it was this director who's standing right in front of me saying, play, damn it. Right. So from my very first moment on stage, I had performance anxiety, right?
Wow.
And there's all sorts of studies that have been done that about 75% of performers, regardless of experience, regardless of age, experience enough performance anxiety that it affects how they perform. There was a study done on a major symphony orchestra. They found the same thing. 75% of these guys who are playing violin and cello and oboe in this major symphony orchestra had experienced enough performance anxiety that it affected how they played to a certain extent. So yeah, my whole life, I experienced it. And then when I started this program for students of popular music at Catawba College, yeah, 75% of them also suffered from it. So at that point, I wanted to do something for them.
So I guess it's safe to say, and you just, gave us one example. I was gonna say, how have the challenges that you face in your career with performance anxiety, how they shaped your approach to helping others overcome it.
Mm.
Um, it became something that you do as a career.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. That's right. Said at least made a side hustle out of it, right? In true musician fact, true musician faction
Right.
fashion.
So you've tackled really two areas of this, and you alluded to it in your description you just gave us. One is stage fright, and the other maybe is speech fright.
Yeah.
But what's the difference between the two? Can you have one and not the other as an example? Because I'm envisioning this and I'm thinking, well, if you're frozen, you're not talking.
Yeah, well, well put. Yeah, no, for the most part, they're the same, and that's why they're both lumped under performance anxiety, right? And actually, it's the same thing, essentially, that let's say the athletes at the Olympics right now are experiencing. Right now, they don't have a name for it the way competition anxiety I've heard,
Right.
but yeah, here's why they're the same, if I may, right? You're prone to it, to performance anxiety, if three factors are at play. One, you perform in front of others or you speak in front of others. But we have to understand that really broadly, right? That can be a formal audience, or it can be just an informal gathering, or it can be just one person. Somebody you want to ask out on a date, someone you're asking your boss for a raise.
Yeah.
All of those are essentially a performance, right? They become a performance because of factor two. The person that you're performing for, speaking to, whatever, is judging you, or at least you feel they're judging you, right? It may be in your mind that they're actually judging you, but you feel they're judging you. Okay. Third factor: if that judgment was negative, it would be some sort of threat to you. Now, that threat is often, you know, buried way deep down in a bunch of different lesser anxieties till you get to kind of a core anxiety, right? So anytime those three factors are at play, 75% of us at least
Hmm.
are going to be prone to experiencing stage fright, speech fright, performance anxiety.
Yeah, as you're describing that, I'm thinking, we're saying stage fright, but you put that, and you talked about, you started with Olympics, but you could put that all in a business environment, and you might have those same
Yeah.
sort of experiences. So I'm just the applicability of what you're talking about goes beyond the stage and goes beyond the sports arena. It
Oh
could
yeah,
be the
absolutely,
different,
absolutely.
right?
Sure. Sure, and,
Um,
and I've worked with all sorts of people, right? From business, from what is that called? C-class
right.
executives, um,
Makes
to
sense.
a father who just wanted to make sure that he didn't pass out when he was doing the wedding speech for his daughter. So, to
Well, that
teachers, to
makes sense.
students, right, to musicians, to other performers, actors. Even worked with a comedian. I've even worked with a few well-known individuals, politicians. I should have mentioned politicians as well. I've worked with a few, but most people don't want to publicly fess up
Sure.
to having, and I want to respect their privacy and so forth.
Yeah, of course. And
Yeah.
especially in, when they're a public figure, right? And there's certain expectations, right?
Well, and,
Um,
and their and their careers depend on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, for sure.
You have a PhD in musicology.
That's a
How
lie. Oh
how
no, sorry. I hear.
So how does that play into your work that you've done with stage and speech fright?
Yeah, okay. So, actually, technically, my PhD is in something called ethnomusicology. Um,
Ethnomusicology.
yeah, and and it's It can be a number of different things, but in my case, it was the study of traditional Japanese music, right?
Oh.
So I don't know if it's cropped out here or not, but there's a Japanese lion mask up there, and there's a Japanese drum. Um, so one of the things you learn as an ethnomusicologist, music isn't as universal as we like to think it is, right?
Hmm.
For example, there are Asian things that sound minor and sad to us. They're not minor and sad to the people that make it, right? That's just those things are culturally, those are bound up with culture, right? The one thing that is universal, we all get stage fright. And I know that because I've played with lots of Japanese musicians, and so
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It sounds like
yep.
we can all succumb to it. So as a professor, because you've talked about that as a professor in North Carolina, you've probably seen a wide range of confidence and anxiety in
Mhm.
students. Would you say that there was a larger group of people in one over the other, like in terms of anxiety versus confidence?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd say it's probably the 75% we're prone to
Anxiety.
experiencing stage fright and having some sort of, to some extent, a problem with it. Yeah, for sure.
And so you're saying 75%, in that 75%, uh, is the degree an extreme degree or a moderate degree, or
Yeah,
you don't know they have it?
that's a great question, Guido. The kind of one of the things I do with the 5 day solution is you look at workability, right? And is a situation workable? So if you perform, no matter how nervous you are, if it comes off well, then is it a problem or isn't it? I mean, if it okay, what was his name? Horowitz, right? Famous uh, uh, pianist, right? Classical pianist, renowned, probably the most famous pianist of his time. His wife used to have to push him on stage because he was so nervous, and he would just go out and he'd wow the audience at Carnegie Hall or wherever it was, right? So how bad was his stage fright? On the one hand, in terms of the workability of it, it wasn't so bad. He got his standing ovations. In terms of his experience, it was hell, apparently, right? So it's kind of a tricky question, right?
No, that's fair. That's fair. So and you started talking there about the 5-day solution.
Mhm.
What is the 5-day solution, and you know, does your own personal experience inspire you to create it? Is it the students? Is it the I've been, in all these different places?
Yeah. Well, okay. So I was at Catawba and teaching, young pop singers and singer-songwriters, and they were having problems with their stage fright. And so, I thought, well, I really want to do something for them because I nobody had done anything for me as a student, right?
Yeah.
It had not come up once as being a musician or a music student, right? Not once. So I started looking around for resources and found out that there weren't any really, right? Even to this day, if you go online and the term I hate is conquering, but if you do conquering stage fright, what you're going to find is 10 tips, right? Is kind of it's like a mile wide and an inch deep. And the tips are things like make sure you drink lots of water, breathe, right? Stand up straight, right? I'm not against any of those. I mean, breathing is swell, right? But they don't get at the problem, right? Okay. So there was nothing. So, I thought, well, and being kind of savvy, I think, I thought, well, if there's no book out there, maybe I can, somebody could write one. I'm somebody, right? So maybe, but I didn't know anything about, getting over stage fright. So I, sought out an area therapist, right? A therapist living in the area. And I said, "Hey, would you be interested in co-authoring a book?" Right. So this way, one person knows what they're doing and gets half the, has half the royalties. Me, I get to tag along and get the other half of the royalties. Right. Okay. So I say, I like to say, my mother didn't raise an idiot. Right. She left that to my father for the most part. All right.
Poor
So,
dad.
so we started having these writing sessions, every week. And, about a month into them, she said, "Well, what do you do about your stage fright?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it's kind of quirky." He said, uh, when I was about 20 or so, I lived in a Zen monastery for a year, right? There was a big old house in Berkeley, California. They'd been taken, it had turned into the Zen center. So to call it a monastery, is a little maybe overblown. But anyway, but legitimate Zen center that we studied under a Korean Zen master. And I said, "Well, one of the big things that we were taught was to detach yourself from whatever troubling thoughts, misgivings, anxieties you have. Not to try to fight them, not try to think your way through them, not try to get to the root of them. Just detach yourself from them." And I said, "Well, I was kind of a fallen Buddhist at that point, but that part had stuck with me." And I continued to use it. So, when I would perform, and in other ways in my life, as a professor, I'd have to speak a lot publicly and so forth. And when I would feel performance anxiety, I learned to detach myself from those thoughts, right? And so you got to remember, Guido, this was about 15 years ago. And she stopped me like in mid-sentence. She said, "Yeah, that sounds like this new type of therapy that's catching on. It's called mindfulness." And I said, "Never heard of it." Oh, and she said, "Oh, you gotta look it up." He said, "I don't think you need me, right? Just teach your students this." Okay. So I looked into it. Yeah, and it was kind of spookily. Is that a word? Uh,
Sure.
spookily, very much like what I had learned from my Zen master. And then I looked up the creator of mindfulness, John Kabat-Zinn. He'd studied with the same Zen master. What are the chances, right? So
Uh,
that's all the encouragement, that's all the confidence I needed, right?
yeah.
Now mindfulness has gone on. It's become Mick mindfulness, and it's kind of collapsed under its own weight and so forth. And how I do it is a little bit different. I bring it back to kind of the same stuff that John Kabat-Zinn was. So anyway, the 5-day solution is simply, teaching public speakers, musicians, athletes, whoever, just that mindful practice of detaching yourself from, your anxiety.
How did you land on 5 days? Is there a science behind the number five? Like,
Damn,
I'm just
damn
so
you, Matt,
it,
asking that question. Okay,
what
you want you want the
can it
real
be
answer?
3 days?
Okay, yeah, it could have
I
been.
got a short attention span. What if it's 3 days?
Well, no, seriously, and I offer this free webinar,
Yeah.
and I tell people I could have called it the 5-minute stage fright solution, because the bones of it, the essence of it, is really simple, right? Now, honestly, I called it the 5-day solution because I thought 7 days was too long, right? I can teach this people, or the book could teach people this, in a week, but gonna want a couple of days off in there, maybe, and so forth. So 3 days sounded too short, I didn't want to oversell it. So honestly, it was more that. But it's true that I can, when I do live workshops, I do it as a 5-hour solution. Right. We do a couple, 2.5 hours in the morning, take lunch, and do the other 2.5 hours after lunch.
So in fairness and in seriousness too,
Yeah.
when I talk to folks who specialize in in different areas, whether it's for physical health or mental health, um, you know, they all seem to attach a period of time to be able to execute a program or a set of instructions, etc. And what
Mhm.
I've been finding more and more lately is that less is more. So even in physical therapy,
Oh,
there were instances where we talk about, well, before, oh, you have to 3 times a week for
mhm.
45 minutes, and then you got to hook up the machine. And now, some folks are saying you don't need to do all that.
Yeah.
You're trying to retrain your muscle, or you're trying to retrain, the particular limb or function. And really 10 minutes a day is
Yeah.
better than 45 3 times a day. So there's some
Yeah.
consistency and logic that I'm seeing more and more lately, it seems, in these different spaces.
And it certainly resonates with the 5 days. If I were going to do it over, it started with the book, The 5 Day Solution, right?
Right.
If I were going to start from scratch again, I don't know that I'd say 5 days. But even with the online course, there's on Monday, it's a drip release course. And so on Monday, you get a lesson, essentially 5 lessons, 6 lessons. There's a day zero, right, to prepare. But you can read through, you can watch the videos, all of that for a day of a week in an hour. And then you have the rest of the week to practice mindfulness. I give students mindfulness exercises to practice. So, and you're right, like doing it 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes here. There are some wonderful, like red light mindfulness. Just when you're stuck at a red light, just take that kind of indeterminate amount of time to just, try to, Japanese call it mushin, and it means no heart, but it really means no mind. To just sit there with a still, quiet mind, right?
Right.
And it's not so much for the still, quiet mind as because you're going to get random thoughts coming into your head,
Yeah.
right? If we were to spend 20 seconds, it wouldn't make for very good podcasting. But if we were to spend 20 seconds just doing nothing, just sitting quietly,
Right.
if you're like most of us, all sorts of random thoughts
Oh,
would come,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So what you're doing is learning to accept them, right? Not to fight them, just accept them, and then uh, just re-engage with what you're doing. Staring at the red light,
Right.
or for example, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and it that resonates with me too. I do yoga, and
yeah, sure.
there's different types of yoga, and sometimes you're in a spot, and the thoughts come rushing in, and you have to reset
Yeah.
and refocus, etc. Um, Look, earlier you said, there's tips out there, the 10 things of stage fright, etc. And I got a chuckle because by the time you're trying to remember all those tips, you probably are getting anxiety just from trying to remember them all. What's the difference between that and other solutions and your 5 day solution? What would you?
Yeah. First off, I made reference earlier to I hate this term conquering
Right.
stage. There's no one and done cure for performance anxiety. Anytime those three right factors are at play, you're going to be prone to them. It doesn't matter if you're that 75%, you're going to be prone to stage fright. In fact, in therapy, I understand they call, for example, if you were to say, I'm never going to get angry again, I'm never going to get sad again, that's called a dead man's tale, a dead man's goal, because only a dead person can
Right.
accomplish it, right? So
Right.
same thing with stage fright, saying, I'm going to conquer my stage fright. I'm never going to get nervous again in front of an audience. That's a dead man's goal, right?
Right.
So that's differentiates what I do. Number one. Number two is to let you know there's nothing wrong with you when you get nervous. If you're facing those three factors, if you're human, right? In fact, I tell people, it's one, that I work with, you get stage fright, you're perfect. You're just perfectly human, right? So that's number two, right?
Right.
Um, so if someone's coming to me and says, "Oh, I have stage fright. I'm here. Please cure me," right? No, I'm not going to happen. And don't believe anybody who says there's some TED talk where a
Right.
guy came up and, with the little microphone or something, and how he never gets stage fright again. BS, right? He was famous for like 5 minutes for it, and because he put on a good pitch, but
Sure.
yeah, so
Um, on that note,
mhm.
are there misconceptions about stage or speech fright?
Yeah, yeah, there certainly are, and I've kind of already touched upon two of them, right? The other thing is that this you get this with performers a lot. A little fear is a good thing,
Hmm.
right? Um, and I think that you hear that from musicians a lot, especially spotlight performers, the ones that are out in front and they gotta get themselves worked up and and really get the crowd worked up and so forth. It's a misconception, I think, more than anything. There are two situations in that are almost the same in terms of what happens to you physically. One is being nervous, the other is being excited. Both of them release adrenaline into your system. And adrenaline is a pretty dumb hormone, right? It doesn't differentiate. Oh, well, you're excited. Well, then the symptoms that you want are this. Oh, no, you're nervous. Right? So in both cases, your fingers going to tremble. Your palms, you're going to get sweaty. And so I think a lot of and as a spotlight performer in particular, or a politician who wants to go out there and rile up the crowd or whatever it might be, you want to be up, right? I'm sure I've got a little adrenaline going right now, right? Um, so you want to be up. And maybe since you've had stage fright before, you equate it with getting up, right? And, emotionally, you know, uh, you know, uh, getting up for the moment, right? So you think, oh, well, there a nervousness is a little nervousness is a good thing because it animates me. It gets me ready to perform. Well,
Hmm.
so would being excited, right?
I hadn't till you just mentioned it, I hadn't made the connection between the two, that they're both adrenaline based.
Yeah, yeah,
And so as you're, and then I'm going through examples in my head going, oh yeah, that, oh yeah, I felt the exact same way. And it's adrenaline based, right? And
yeah, yeah,
and then what ends up happening, I think, when you realize those things, then your approach to dealing with them
yeah.
becomes easier. It's the realization, right? And the other part that you kind of made me think about there as you were talking is, um again, you can't, I've got to want to be able to do something about it. I
Mhm.
can't just show up and you wave a magic wand and it's done. So there has to be something where I'm saying, yeah, let's do this. I want to tackle this
Mhm.
and take that first approach. With that in mind, and you were talking about your course and some preparation, um, how do how would somebody prepare themselves to attend your course? Do they read the book first? Do they wait for something?
Yeah.
What would they need to do?
Yeah, I fell into this analogy in a podcast just a little while ago. When I was in high school, again, Tucson, Arizona, right? I got really enthusiastic about karate, but there really weren't any karate teachers in Tucson at that time. But at the public library, they had a book on karate, right? So I went to the library, checked it out, and I didn't get very far, right? Now, I don't want to undercut my own book, but, you know, uh, uh, in online course, especially, we have different levels of it. And if you have the ones that have, the interaction with me, that, I'm actually coaching you as well, it's definitely so yeah, you don't need the book if you're going to take the online course, and I'd like to think the online course is the superior the superior experience of them. Now, as far as preparation, I don't even know to this day, Guido, whether to even mention that it's based on mindfulness, because mindfulness has gotten just, I don't think with performers, I don't think performers are gonna, you know, but I'm one podcast for Speech Fright. The guy said, yeah, probably people see mindful and think, what is this, 2017? Uh, so you just need to have an open mind. And, my approach to mindfulness, if that's what it is straightforward. And it's just to, you know, clinically, stage fright does a lot. There's a lot of clinical studies that show it does, great for people with obesity and depression, ADHD. So, if you steer away from the McMindfulness side of the
Yeah.
street, I think it's valuable. So that's really the only preparation, is just come to the course with an open mind.
Yeah, and as you're doing that with the open mind, and you referenced the 2017 comment, right? We are in a state where things happen so fast that we think if it's not new, it's bad.
Yeah.
If if it uses some foundation that is rooted in our history, then it's bad.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
or that it's not valuable, or that somebody who just wrote something fresh in a blog is maybe because it's newer, and
Yeah. No.
that's not
Yeah.
always the case here. um is there a when you look at people who would benefit from the course, is there a group that you say, well, if you're in this group, it'd probably be something easier for you to do, versus if you're in this other group over here? um it sounds like you apply the same lens
Yeah,
to
it
it,
is.
but
Yeah, it is. And I would say it's kind of, it evens itself out, but for different reasons. I would say younger performers and students and so forth are maybe more open-minded when they come into it.
right.
But older people, yeah, I have, know a very successful New York City drummer, right? He does lots of recording sessions. And, he says, for years, I've gotten nervous before every single recording session I've done. So with folks who have, been around the block a few times, it's more that they're just tired
Yeah.
of anxiety, right? Anything, please. Now, and I would say people in the middle, because it can be advantageous in, it's a what, soft skill, like public speaking is an important soft skill. So those who, are trying to maximize their potential and so forth, in the middle, I think they come to it also, with enthusiasm, typically.
So as we run the gamut and say, look, it's open to everybody, and we'll all be at different stages, so there isn't hey, you're coming in at this stage and we're going to talk to you a different way. We all can consume the information, the resources, the same way. Let's just talk about those resources. So we know that there's a book, we know that there's a website.
Mhm.
uh is there a webinar? Do they have access to
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, yeah. I like for everyone to start with the free recorded webinar that I have.
Okay.
It's about 30 minutes. And it goes through, in more detail than we have the chance to do here, what the solution is all about.
Okay.
Right. So I like that to be the start, because um it's a commitment, right? To take an online course financially, in terms of
Sure.
time and so forth. And, if a person isn't willing to spend 30 minutes to sit through about what it's all about, it's probably not right for them. Right. So,
Now,
um,
do they, once they do this and
mhm.
take the course, access to the book, do you have a network afterwards where you stay in touch and support each other and things like that?
Yeah, and we have, I have offered different tiers, right? And in the least expensive, the most affordable, You you know, you are invited. You don't need to, but you're invited to join a forum, right? So, which I moderate, and so the students are, and that's so, one of the interesting things here, Guido, when I get like live groups talking about this, it's and someone shares something about their stage fright, invariably again, you, you too. I thought I was the only person who felt that, right? So there's just something, the support and the sharing of experiences and so forth is great. And you would be surprised, they're not that much different. A 55-year-old, CEO and a 17-year-old high school student when it comes to stage fright.
Yeah.
I mean, what's making them scared may be different. The board of trustees is going to can you if you don't give a great presentation on the rollout of your new product or something, right? So, but or as opposed to speaking in class, giving a book report, but essentially still the same. Okay. So I want to make it possible for just about anybody. So at the, most affordable, tier, it's the online forum, which I moderate, right?
Okay.
Beyond that, then we middle tier, we come up with a personalized plan for the student. This is where you start getting the personalized service. I make you accountable for doing your homework, getting
Yeah.
it done. And that's a big part of, what online courses are about, which you
Yeah.
can't get from the book, is, inspiring you, not making you, inspiring you to be, to take responsibility for getting it done. Then at the third level, I have private sessions with the students. And then at the fourth level, the student sends their Learjet for me, and I fly to Nashville or Los Angeles for the week. So,
Nice. Nice. Or Toronto. Or
or
Toronto.
Toronto, yes.
Or Toronto. It's cool. You're talking about the the folks and consuming it and the different strategies and techniques and the different types of folks that would take the course.
Mhm.
And I was just thinking back, there's several reasons I started this show. One of them, and I tend to do this all the time, if I'm not good at something, I tend to throw myself into the fire on it and say,
Good for
well,
you.
can
Yeah,
let's see what happens, right?
yeah.
And I never it didn't bother me to speak in front of people, but I felt a certain anxiety when I
Mhm.
had to. I would still do it and it would come out, okay. And then so I thought, all right, well, I'm going to start a show. Again, not the only reason, many reasons why I started this, but one of them was I want to get better at this. I want to get better at
Uh,
speaking or
Good
engaging and
for
not
you.
feel so
Yeah,
nervous about it, right?
sure.
And so, looking back, some of the own progression there, right? So,
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
reminded me, right? Maybe with your course and your materials and the things you have in place, we don't all have to be kamikazes about, overcoming this because you have something in place that would take somebody even like myself through those stages with a better support mechanism. Uh,
Exactly. Right.
you have a website,
Mhm.
is speechfrightsolution.com. Is
Yeah,
that the site you're referencing?
yeah. I have two parallel universes
Okay,
going. Well, if you're a performer, then it's all one word, stagefrightsolution.com.
okay,
Right. If you are someone who speaks in front of others, then it's speechfrightsolution.com.
great.
Now, 90% of the course, honestly, is the same. And that's a good thing because, the same musician I said I know who gets, nervous at recording sessions, he has a band that performs on cruises.
Right,
And he says, well, I'm fine playing in the band, but when I have to get up to introduce who we are and interact with the audience, that's when I get nervous.
yeah,
So that same musician who, if she were to take the stage fright class, it's going to apply to their speech fright, right? The difference is that they're optimized for those two different, audiences, if you will. And also, I found that, and we even tried to make it even more differentiate a little bit, that we'll try to get all of the business people to be in one section of the class and all of the students to be in another. The musicians and actors, you got to keep them apart. Right. So you can have the musicians in one section and actors in another section. But anyway, going back to the question, it's stagefrightsolution.com and speechfrightsolution.com.
Yeah,
And
and I'll
Mhm.
get those in the notes so that we have that distinction. And even what you just said makes sense. Like I play a little guitar, and when um you're playing something and you know the chords and it's rehearsed and you know the lyrics and you're following something. But in between songs, when you're talking,
Yeah.
it's different because depending on, are you in a bar? Are you in a church?
Yeah.
Are you,
Uh,
the environment changes, the
yeah.
faces change, and so there's a
Yeah.
dynamic to all of it,
Oh,
right?
and then it's the worst when let's say you're playing in a bar and you play something really well and you get like,
Right.
and now
The
you got to stand up and speak enthusiastically to the people.
you know,
Hey, well, great. How you all
I
doing tonight?
I did an event once, and it's a holiday event. And so you're playing your music, but everybody's drinking and eating and talking, and you're playing, and if you try to talk sometimes in between, but if you're actually watching, you're just the background music,
Oh yeah.
right? You're just
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
part of it is you kind of sit there and you go, do they even hear me? Like, do I exist? And then you start to think about those things,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's when some of the anxiety
Oh
can
yeah, sure.
creep
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
little bit.
And
Yeah.
it's that threat
Yeah.
can be very, clear and imminent, right? If you're doing an audition,
Yeah.
yeah, let's say I did a podcast for actors just a week or so ago, and and when they do casting calls,
Right.
and they're just read this in front of one or two casting directors, that's makes them as nervous as anything, I understand, right? Does. So yeah, what you were talking about, so that's an immediate imminent threat, right? If I
Yeah.
don't do well, I don't get this gig. If I
Yeah.
don't get this gig, I may not make rent. If I don't make rent, I got to stop being an actor, got to move back to Oklahoma, Nebraska,
Yeah.
wherever I'm from. So that's media. The other type of threat is often more existential, right?
Yeah.
What you were talking about is a more existential threat. It's just as real, right? It's sometimes you're not even conscious about what it is, that's threatening you there, but it's
Yeah.
there and it's typically real. You know, that's why I guess one of the things we didn't touch upon. I want folks to understand when you get scared, there's typically a real reason for it. Okay. It's not, oh, I shouldn't be getting scared over this. No, there's something that's a legitimate, threat to you here.
Yeah, and that's fair. Don't ignore your own feelings or your own red
Yeah.
flags, is
Yeah,
what it
for
comes down
sure.
to.
Yeah.
Look, I want to thank you for doing this chat with us. I know you've covered a lot of ground. You're really good because some of the things I was going to ask you, you just weaved them ahead, and you kind of knew already, and it just shows the level that you're working at and your level of professionalism and expertise. But before we end our segment, is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah. How about offering the folks who watch this a discount on on either the speech fright solution or a stage fright solution, right?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Uh, So if we'll work out the details, Guido, but
Okay,
it will give you a discount code.
awesome.
Um, and maybe we'll make it Guido and then a number after it, right? Uh,
Okay.
so and and I think that'd be I'm happy to do that to promote. It sounds cheesy, I know, but I am on a mission here. This is a needless menace. You
Yeah.
know, needless menace, and there's a lot there's a lot of, just nonsense out there about what to do of it. Here's something legitimate. It's not going to cure it. Let me say that again. That's a dead man's goal.
Yeah.
But Guido, I can give people something legitimate that will help them with their performance anxiety.
Yeah, and Dr. Fish, we didn't really touch on this one aspect of it, and maybe we will in the closing out of this. Like as you're talking about performance anxiety and speech and stage, there's an underlying mental health component to all of this as well. And we know we now have data, we have statistics, we have information that that is one of the one of the greatest things that we have to overcome
Yeah.
in our modern day.
Yeah.
And this could just be, an extension of that. So the fact that you're, making the material available and that you're offering people an opportunity, especially in the different economic states that we have right now, to consume it at a reduced cost. I appreciate that, and
Yeah, of
hopefully
course.
they'll take you up on that. And
Sure.
we'll, like I said, you and I will talk. We'll get that into the notes, so people have to do a little bit of work and look in the notes, but we'll make sure that they know it's there. Um, Look at Dr. David Lee Fish. You shared your experience on stage and speech fright. You shared your 5-day solution as part of overcoming performance anxiety. I will have all of your contact information in the notes, and folks can check out the 2 websites that we'll have there as well. Thank you so much again, Dr. Fish, and I hope that we'll have a chance to catch up again.
Absolutely. I'd love to, Guido, and wonderful questions. This has been a delight.